Few aircraft in aviation history have captured the imagination quite like the F-117 Nighthawk. Its jagged, alien-like profile looked more like a spacecraft than a combat jet, yet it became the world's first operational stealth fighter, rewriting the rules of modern warfare. But what if this pioneering design had not only served the US Air Force, but also found its way to sea, taking off from the decks of US Navy aircraft carriers? That nearly happened. Lockheed's legendary Skunk Works division quietly explored the idea of a navalized Nighthawk during the 1990s. The project, known as the F-117N Seahawk, promised to combine stealth strike capability with carrier-based flexibility. While it never came to fruition, imagining what might have been reveals just how radically it could have reshaped naval air power. Birth of the Nighthawk. The journey toward stealth aviation began long before the Nighthawk's maiden flight in 1981. In the early 1970s, US military planners faced a daunting challenge. Soviet air defense systems were becoming increasingly dense and lethal, threatening any potential strike missions. Traditional approaches such as flying faster or higher were no longer enough. The solution surprisingly came from Soviet science itself. In 1964, Russian physicist Pyotr Ufimtsev published a groundbreaking paper demonstrating that radar reflections depended less on an object's size than on its shape. Properly angled surfaces could scatter radar signals away rather than reflecting them back, drastically reducing detectability. Though largely ignored in the Soviet Union, Lockheed engineers recognized its potential. By 1975, Lockheed began HAVBLUE, a small, angular demonstrator built to prove stealth was feasible. Its faceted surfaces looked nothing like conventional aircraft, but the results were stunning. Despite stability problems, HAVBLUE showed that radar-evading flight was possible, laying the foundation for a full-scale combat aircraft. In 1978, the U.S. Air Force gave Lockheed the green light to develop a new aircraft under a program known as Senior Trend. This would eventually become the F-117A Nighthawk. Shrouded in secrecy, the project moved quickly. By June 1981, the first prototype was airborne, and by 1983, the aircraft was declared operational. Its existence, however, remained a closely guarded secret until 1988, when the US government finally acknowledged it after years of speculation. The stealth revolution. The Nighthawk was nothing short of a marvel of Cold War engineering. Its diamond-like fuselage and jagged wings reflected radar beams in all directions except back to their source. Radar-absorbent materials further reduced its signature, while carefully designed exhaust systems lowered its heat emissions. Even its mission profile emphasized invisibility. It flew at night, at subsonic speeds, and without afterburners in order to avoid sonic booms or glowing exhaust plumes. Because its design prioritized stealth over aerodynamics, the F-117 was inherently unstable in flight. Only advanced fly-by-wire controls, still a relatively new technology at the time, kept it flyable. The aircraft was packed with sophisticated avionics that allowed it to navigate deep into enemy territory and deliver precision-guided bombs with surgical accuracy. Though it carried the F designation of a fighter, the Nighthawk was in reality a stealth attack aircraft designed primarily for striking high-value targets. The Nighthawk first entered combat in 1989 during the U.S. invasion of Panama, but it was the Gulf War in 1991 that cemented its reputation. Flying more than 1,300 sorties, the F-117 destroyed over 1,600 key targets inside Iraq's heavily defended airspace. Despite flying directly into some of the densest integrated air defense systems in the world, the Nighthawks emerged unscathed. Their precision, stealth, and survivability revolutionized the concept of modern air warfare, proving that small, radar-invisible aircraft could neutralize targets deep inside enemy territory. Enter the Seahawk concept. Flush with the Nighthawk's success, Lockheed proposed a bold idea to the U.S. Navy in the 1990s. A carrier-capable version of the stealth fighter, Nicknamed the Seahawk, this concept envisioned stealth aircraft flying not only from Air Force bases, but also from the decks of U.S. carriers anywhere in the world. For the Navy, the potential was enormous. A stealth strike platform would allow carrier battle groups to hit coastal and inland targets with little or no warning, greatly expanding their power projection capabilities. The Seahawk was not just a copy of the F-117 with a tailhook. Lockheed's engineers recognized that operating from a carrier required fundamental changes. The Seahawk design featured wings with flaps and ailerons for improved low-speed handling, along with horizontal stabilizers to enhance maneuverability during catapult launches and arrested landings. The aircraft would have been powered by General Electric F-414 engines, the same type later used by the Super Hornet, producing 44,000 pounds of thrust. These engines, with their afterburning capability, would have given the Seahawk the muscle to take off from carrier decks, although afterburner use would likely have been restricted during combat missions to preserve stealth. Equally significant was the planned expansion of its weapons bay. Unlike the original Nighthawk, which could carry a limited payload, the Seahawk would have had capacity for up to 10,000 pounds of ordnance. This meant not only more precision-guided bombs, but also the potential to carry medium-range air-to-air missiles, such as the AEM-120 AMRAAM. For missions where stealth was not required, external hardpoints could be used to mount additional weapons. All of these changes would have transformed the aircraft from a dedicated strike jet into a versatile stealth fighter, something the Navy had never had before. How it could have fit into the fleet. Had it been built, the Seahawk might have paired perfectly with the Navy's existing aircraft of the time. The F-14 Tomcat was the Navy's premier air superiority fighter, designed to intercept and destroy enemy aircraft before they could threaten the fleet. The Seahawk, on the other hand, could have slipped beneath enemy radar and struck high-value ground targets with surgical precision. Together, they would have provided a devastating combination of air dominance and stealthy strike capability. This partnership might even have altered the fate of the Tomcat itself. With the Seahawk taking over strike duties, the Navy could have concentrated on upgrading the Tomcat rather than retiring it. The proposed Super Tomcat 21, a modernized version with new avionics, engines, and even limited stealth features, could have become a reality. Instead, the Tomcat was phased out in favor of the more versatile but less iconic Super Hornet. In an alternate history, the Tomcat and Seahawk might have formed a fearsome duo dominating the skies and seas well into the 21st century. Why the Seahawk never flew? The Seahawk never advanced beyond proposals due to financial and strategic reasons. With the Cold War over in the early 1990s, U.S. defense budgets shrank, making new aircraft programs politically difficult. Lockheed was already focused on the F-22 Raptor and F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, which promised greater long-term value. Technically, converting the unstable Nighthawk airframe for carrier use would have required major redesigns, stronger landing gear, reinforced structure, and corrosion protection, driving up costs and delaying development. By then, the Seahawk would have been a new aircraft altogether, weakening its case as a viable program. Imagining the impact. It's fascinating to imagine how naval aviation might have evolved differently had the Seahawk entered service. Carriers in the 1990s could have deployed stealth strike capability decades before the F-35 became operational. This would have allowed the Navy to strike inland targets in heavily defended regions without relying on Air Force support. The strategic advantages would have been enormous. Equally intriguing is the impact it might have had on the Tomcat. With the Seahawk assuming the stealth strike role, the Navy might have retained and modernized the F-14 instead of retiring it. A fleet of Super Tomcat 21s alongside Seahawks could have provided unmatched air superiority and strike power, giving the Navy a combination of range, speed, and stealth that would have been difficult for any adversary to counter. And that wraps up our deep dive into the forgotten stealth fighter that almost joined the Navy, the F-117N Seahawk. If you enjoyed this breakdown and love exploring the secret history of military aircraft, make sure to hit that like, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.